be anywhere. There you go. You could be anywhere and you chose to be here. So again, thank you for doing that. Again, my name is Maria Ocasio. I am the field coordinator for both Penn Future and Conservation Voters of PA in the Lehigh Valley. And again, we are just so excited that you are here to join us today. If you haven't already, again, please feel free to put in the chat box why you're here today. And while you're doing that, again, you probably heard it on my computer. Tonight's webinar will be recorded and we will share it in a follow-up email. Again, you can certainly share that with some of your folks who weren't able to come tonight. It is also going to be posted on our website. In addition, those will have our, some of our other webinars that we've hosted. So again, that will be available on our website as well. And finally, we will be hosting a Q&A section at the end of this webinar. So please, if you have any questions, you can submit that in the chat and we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible. We understand that can get a little tricky. So that is what we have moving forward. So Michael.
Cool, thank you so much, Maria, and welcome everyone tonight. My name is Michael Mehrazar. I'm the field manager for both Penn Future and Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania, and I'm going to be co-moderating tonight's webinar. First, our hosts for our event tonight are Penn Future and Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania, two statewide environmental advocacy groups that work to protect our clean air, pure water, and a stable climate for every Pennsylvanian. And we also work extremely hard to make sure the public at large is educated on the importance of these issues, which is a big part of why we're here tonight.
All right, thank you, Michael. So we also had help today with our fantastic co-sponsors. They are the Tookoonee and Tacony Frankford Watershed Partnership, the Shrubgrass Creek Watershed Association, and the Wissahickon Trail. We'll now turn it over to each of them to briefly introduce their organization. So we will start with Julie. Oh, Julie, you are muted.
There we go. Hey, everybody. My name is Julie Slavitt. I'm the executive director of the Tookoonee Frankford Watershed Partnership. I apologize for that muting moment there. TTF is a 30 square mile Philadelphia urban watershed, an impaired urban watershed. Our mission is to connect people to their creeks. Our focus is on improving our watershed. We do that through education, restoration, stewardship, and advocacy. And we are very proud of our name. Tookoonee and Tacony is from the same Lenape word, which means woods or hidden place.
Thank you, Julie. Next, we'll pass it over to Tom Thomas.
Hi, I'm Tom Thomas. I'm chair of the Scrubgrass Creek Watershed Association in Southern Venango County. We are basically about halfway between Pittsburgh and Erie. We have a 26,000 acre watershed, which is mostly in Venango and a little bit in Butler County. And we have a long history of surface mining for the last 60 years, along with abandoned oil wells, which act like conduits to bring the once the casing rusts out, the water comes to the surface. So not only do we have acid mine drains, but we have routes for it to come into our waterways. Anyway, and we have a very small membership, and we've been in existence for like 22 years.
Thank you for that, Tom. And then Maddie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maddie Neff. I'm the communications specialist with Wissahickon Trails. A little bit about our organization. We are a community-supported nonprofit conservation organization, and our mission is to inspire and engage diverse communities of people to protect, steward, and enjoy the land and waterways of the Wissahickon Valley. Our geographic focus is in the Montgomery County portion of the Wissahickon watershed, which is located in the traditional and ancestral territory of the Lenni Lenape people. We have about 1,300 acres of open space that's preserved. We have 12 preserves with 24 miles of trails that are open to the public year-round. Our Green Ribbon Trail follows the Wissahickon Creek, which flows from Montgomery County into Philadelphia and eventually the Schuylkill. We monitor water quality, especially in the creek and its tributaries, and we have recreational, educational, and volunteer opportunities for the local community. You can find us at wishickentrails.org. And I'd just like to thank Conservation Voters of PA and Penn Future for inviting us to co-sponsor this program tonight. Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much, and we really appreciate you all being here tonight. For tonight's presentation, we're going to be speaking about the Growing Greener program. But before we get to that, we'd like to take a moment just to review some of the challenges, environmental challenges that we face all throughout the state. One of the key ones deals with water quality. For example, the Commonwealth has failed to meet its goal for reducing agriculture pollution in the Chesapeake Bay watershed for many, many years. In the Delaware River supplies more than 40% of the state's population's drinking water, which just highlights the importance of making sure that that water source is protected. And when you go west to the Ohio River watershed, it has been impacted by legacy toxins from industry and acid mine drainage for many years and to this day in many regards.
Not so great news. Thank you, Michael. So flooding has been an extremely important issue throughout the state. Perhaps nowhere has this been more obvious than the disastrous impacts of Hurricane Ida last year. And unfortunately, projections show that precipitation rates will continue to increase for years to come due to climate change.
And then finally, land preservation is a challenge that faces the state, no matter what part you're at. Particularly, this is important with regards to traditional farmland, which is losing their farmlands to excess development, which will severely impact Pennsylvania's heritage and economy going forward.
So now that we've outlined some of the environmental challenges that we face in Pennsylvania, we're now going to turn it over to Michelle Giles, our CVPA's policy analyst, to learn a little about the history and the structure of Growing Greener program. Oh, Michelle, I think you're muted.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Great, thanks. Yeah, that brings us to Pennsylvania's Growing Greener program. Growing Greener is the single largest investment of state funds in Pennsylvania history to answer various environmental problems. It was first introduced and signed into law in 1999 to commit $650 million over 5 years to support projects to improve water quality, to reduce flooding, preserve open space and farmland, restore damaged land, and enhance outdoor recreation. The funds are distributed to the Department of Environmental Protection, the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, the Department of Agriculture, and PennVest. Following this, in 2005, Growing Greener 2 was established, which would spread $625 million between 6 state agencies to continue this important work. Unfortunately, the state has not invested new funds into the Growing Greener program since 2005. This has left much less funding for new projects. And as Michael and Maria said in the previous slide, Pennsylvania has many environmental challenges that could be addressed using this funding source if it was allowed to gain more state funds. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Michelle. So thank you again for giving us that detailed background. We are now going to showcase several projects that have benefited from the Growing Greener program. And again, we are lucky to have two organizations that have received Growing Greener money to participate. First, we'll hear from Julie Slavitt of the Tookonie Frankford Watershed Partnership. So Julie, go ahead.
Hey, how is everybody? There's a little lag with the muting thing there, but I think we got it. Thanks, Maria and Michelle. So, what we're all talking about is what happens to our water with what we do on our land. And I just wanted to start by sharing what our watershed looks like, giving you a little bit of an overview. So that's our 30 square mile watershed, half Philadelphia. On the bottom part there of where there's no longer a lot of tributaries, and the top half is eastern Montgomery County, where we still have creeks remaining that haven't been piped and culverted. So there's just a little picture of what our watershed looks like to give you a sense. Growing Greener funding has been really critical for us in enabling us to do some projects at our focus, which is headwater creeks. So that's really wonderful to be able to sort of start at the top and try to improve our watershed from the top down. What we're all dealing with is runoff, volume and velocity. And if we can do that sort of from the headwaters, it makes it, it's a good strategy to have. So I'm going to first talk about, can I have the next slide? I'm going to talk about Avathor Park. So again, we have a headwater focus. So Avalor Park, which is a beautiful park in Abington Township. Abington has been an incredible partner with us on all our projects. And our focus on Avathor Park is on the Jenkintown Creek. And what Growing Greener funding has enabled us to do is work with the township to really focus on this large park and the impacts that it has on the Jenkintown Creek, which runs through it. So we've been able to bring in, Growing Greener provided us with $540,000 of a $1.15 million overall project cost, project budget. And what we're looking at here, so what we've done is a bunch of different projects on this site. And I think that's probably similar to what other folks have looked at, which is you're on a big site and there's a lot you can do once you develop a relationship with a partner. So this is a bioswale project. This is a bioswale project here. So you can see sort of under construction, and then what the facilities look like on the right there, where the water comes in, where the water goes out. You can go to the next one. The next slide, and then this is a rain garden that was installed. So we've done a mixture of things at that site. Rain gardens, bioswales, and Growing Greener is enabling us to do a major parking lot project there, because as we all know, paved surfaces and parking lots are really terrible for water quality because of sort of the volume and velocity that come off of them. So we want to go to the next slide. So another wonderful project, and we don't own an inch of land, just to say that. So all our work is with really wonderful partners. So Abington Township, this is Congregation Knesset Israel, which is a congregation in Cheltenham Township. And we really love these pictures. This is a major project where we installed rain tanks. That's what those things look like, that look like big milk cartons. Are basically, they provide void space, something I didn't know what it was until I started this job. So a lot of space to hold water back from the system, from the stormwater system, hold it back while it's raining and let it go more slowly over time, so that volume and velocity, what we're doing to our creeks in terms of erosion, is prevented. So this site was a $265,000 project site. These rain tanks, taking water from the roof. We're also going to be doing some work on the parking lot as well. So next, you want to look at this? Can we just look at the next picture? I know those, there we go. So this is what this looked like on the left after the project was done. So you would never even know that it was there. And the picture at the right, I'm sorry, is not better, but you can see there's the sign for the synagogue right there telling people when services are. And then we put a lawn sign right next to that, thanking and explaining what the project is about. We're always big on that, because a lot of this is about community engagement. So this project was a project that was done to really improve Shoemaker Run. Again, headwater tributaries that run into the Tookonie. The next slide is East Bader Creek. So another headwater creek on the grounds of the Abington School District, Abington Junior High. There's a West Bader Creek as well. And I think, what this really shows, we have been on this site since 2012. So it's been a long-term relationship with the school district, which is wonderful, because it's a lot of opportunities to educate young people as they go through and they see us almost every year. So I just wanted to show, this was a multi-phase buffer project that we did that you can see right there on the left. And here's a couple of students planting trees. We met them in the 8th grade, we saw them in the 9th grade, we saw them in the 10th grade. So it's something they can educate their parents about, talk to their parents about how important this funding is. So this was a project, $65,000 Growing Greener project. We can look at the next slide. We added to the multi-phase buffer that was funded with, at that point, I think mostly Tree Vitalize funding, a couple of other funding sources. Just want to show you how beautiful that buffer was and all the awards that we won and ways that we've really brought attention to this. And then the next project shows sort of the Growing Greener project, which is a rain gardens. So next slide. So this is under construction, and this is now completed, but this was finished with Growing Greener funding. This enabled us to engage with a lot of students, teachers, who brought their classes out here to learn about what the challenges were, what the opportunities were, some of the science about this site. So again, these are really projects that provide a lot of community engagement, let us focus on our challenges, our runoff, our volume, our velocity, and leverage a lot of additional dollars, and are really, in addition to the good that they're doing, the improvements in water quality, they also really serve as models, as pilot projects and models for communities. So thank you. I don't think I have any slides left. I think we're good.
Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that rundown. And just a reminder for folks, we are going to have a question and answer section at the end of the presentation. And Julie was going to stick around to help answer that. So if you have any questions about these type of projects, whether specifically at East Bader Creek or something that you think you might want to have near you, please feel free to put that in the chat. Next up, we're pleased to have Tom Thomas of the Scrubgrass Creek Watershed Association to speak about his organization's experience with Growing Greener. Tom?
Howdy, everyone. I'd like to thank you for the privilege of this opportunity to present what we've tried to do over the last couple of decades. And I got to say, Julie, you're doing some fine work out there, girl. Our stuff, I'd like to say our stuff is a lot dirtier, nastier, and I wrote myself a note to say that we have no community here to engage. Okay, this is a place where the oil fields started. This is where people have cut timber, and it's basically a resource extracting area. So the Scrubgrass Creek, before they started surface mining in the headwaters in the 1950s, was a premier trout stream in Western Pennsylvania. And people came here elbow to elbow and fished on the first day and all that business. So the creek was killed about between 55 and 7. The pH, went from 7 to 3.5. All right. And not only did it kill the fish, it killed the benthos, it killed everything, crayfish, etc. So anyway, we were established. I always used to like to wave documents at meetings, but we were established. You can't read this, but what it says is the Allegheny National Wild and Scenic River report that the Scrubgrass Creek was reported in this document as the most polluted, acid mine drainage polluted stream in the southern corridor, as designated by the federal government. So that was, and I served on. I got a backdoor appointment from the governor and served on a committee, even though everybody disliked me because I have a bad reputation as an environmentalist, which is not good in the old days. But anyway, I served on the thing. We did get that. So some of the first growing greener monies were spent on a plan to rehabilitate our watershed. And then that plan recommended that we plug these wells that I talked about in the introduction. So we plugged 34 orphan wells to the tune of about $275,000. And then we built, this is the Starrett site that you see on the screen. And it was a abandoned active liming plant. So they brought lime in and mixed it with the drainage. So that's how, what happened is when the company went out of business, then there was no more liming and there was no more pH change. So we took the old site and put two beds in there, limestone beds. And the water comes in at 3.5 pH and it goes out about 6.5 to 6.8. And it also has positive alkalinity, so it goes into the main stem. So this is the first passive treatment system we did. And the next slide will show you, maybe. There it is. This is called, we call this US 91, which is Upper Scrubgrass 91. This site was identified as the highest aluminum discharge site in the watershed. And that's the most toxic thing to fish. So we chose this site to treat. And this is yet again, everything I'm showing you is compliments of growing greener. And so this site takes out a huge amount of aluminum, now I don't know the figures, I should. It's 2.5 milligrams per liter or something like that. Anyway, it takes out a lot of aluminum, and all this stuff is going on in the headwaters. So, and I put a plug in for a former senator. Her name was Senator White, Mary Jo White, and she was from Venango. She was our senator, and she was one of the people who helped write the Growing Greener bill. So that's probably, I don't know whether that's why we got our monies initially, but that's what we have been up to. You know, it's not as cool as all those plants you're putting in out there east, I'll tell you that. You know, and we don't have a lot of people who want to work with us because it's a long history of resource extraction, but we're just out here, you know, doing the best we can.
Well, thank you so much, Tom. We really appreciate it. And I think that shows the variety of the Growing Greener program, whether it's in Southeast Pennsylvania, Northwest, or anywhere in between. We recognize that these projects do great work throughout the area. We're next going to take some time to look through some of the Growing Greener projects that we wanted to highlight throughout the area, throughout the state rather. It's important to remember that every single district in Pennsylvania has received Growing Greener money for a project. So by necessity, this is an extremely small sample size, but we just wanted to give a taste of the kind of things that, what this money actually goes to. Maria, do you want to go first?
Yep, sorry about that, folks. That mute button is a tricky one, huh? So we're going to start off actually in my area. The picture that you see up here is of the Hassan Creek that is based in the Lehigh Valley. So back in 2014, Upper Macungie Township received $29,947 in order to conduct a creek cleanup. There you go. Try saying that, Michael.
Thank you, Maria. So next up, we have some pictures of Hartswood, which is based in Bucks County. As you can see in the pictures, folks are working on riparian forest buffer improvements. And if you don't know what that is, a riparian buffer is a vegetated area located near a waterway that is crucial to helping ensure that that water resource is protected. It is one of the most important projects that the Growing Greener funds. And here's just some pictures of what setting that up looks like.
Okay. Next, you'll see we have pictures of the Carlton Drake Park that is located in the Poconos. They received $47,000 from the Growing Greener to help install a stream buffer park. Not only is this good for the community, but it also helps the watershed with stream buffers. Just a little sampling of different pictures, again, how that was used.
Thank you. So here's a picture of an urban meadow, and that's a green space that's located in the middle of Harrisburg. This project was made possible thanks via Growing Greener grant of $200,000 given to Harrisburg Area Community College. And I think this showcases the fact that Growing Greener is not just for our parks or trails, but they really do benefit every single community throughout the state.
Absolutely right, Michael. And the Little Lehigh, this is literally in my backyard, so no biases towards needing more funding in that area. But again, this is again the Lehigh Valley. This is the Little Lehigh Creek. So back in 2014, it received about $23,754 for watershed enhancement. And again, it's just a beautiful little area.
Thank you so much, Maria. And don't worry, folks, if you are curious and want to see those pictures again, we will be sharing the recording later this week. Now, I just wanted to point out that, like I said, there are Growing Greener projects throughout the state. And if you are curious about where there might be one near you, there's actually two online maps, the Environmental Stewardship Fund and the Keystone Fund project, both of which receive Growing Greener monies, that can help identify where are the closest Growing Greener projects to your neighborhood. We're going to make sure to post that in the chat for you all to look at, and we'll also have that in the follow-up email. And we encourage you all to take some time to find out what are the Growing Greener projects that I already take advantage of, and therefore think, what could we do if we expand that? Along that front, I want to point out that next time you're at your favorite park, trail, or even library, keep an eye out for these signs that a lot of times your eyes may glaze over. If you take a little look at the bottom, you'll see that this project, this trailway, was made possible due to a Growing Greener 2 bond fund. Without it, this trailway wouldn't happen. So we really just encourage you, and this is just one example of many, to keep an eye out and see where you already benefit from the Growing Greener project.
Absolutely, folks. You can play Growing Greener bingo with how many Growing Greener fund sites you can find. Sorry, Michael.
Cool, thanks, Maria. Yep. So next, we're going to have our colleague Katie Bloom, Political Director for Conservation Voters of PA, explain the historic opportunity we currently have to expand the Growing Greener program for years to come. Katie?
Thanks, Michael and Maria and everybody else who has spoken. I'm going to go probably drive Michael nuts, go a little bit off script. Before I get into that, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of the watershed folks that we have here today with us. I'm a local municipal elected official. My local conservation association just got in the last round of Growing Greener grants a project here to help keep my high excellent trout stream in front of my house to keep being a high excellent trout stream. So I just want to say thank you to all of our partners and really give that shout out because your work means so much to us. So again, thank you. So what we have going on right now, just sort of a rundown of what we're seeing across the state and in Harrisburg. First of all, hopefully, if you follow along with Penn Future or conservation voters, you know that the American Rescue Plan included a bunch of money, both for the state and for municipalities, to invest in one-time projects. This was designed predominantly as a way to kind of boost the economy some after COVID shutdowns. At the municipal level, there is an option for municipalities. Some municipalities may not have appropriated their funds yet, so please encourage your to look that up to see if your municipality has allocated funds, because municipalities can also use their ARP money for water and stormwater projects as well. Now, at the state level, there are billions of dollars right now in ARP funds that have not been allocated by our representatives and senators. We are looking to have that happen. There are so many programs that Pennsylvania needs an influx of funding in. And we know that families are hurting right now coming out of the pandemic. We know there are still people, struggling to find those good paying jobs if they had been laid off, healthcare needs, etc. But for the first time in a very, very, very long time, and another report just came out from the governor's office earlier today, we have billions in both revenue surplus as well as American Rescue Plan funds that can be allocated. So what does the environmental community want to do with that? Well, the first is growing greener. We want to invest in growing greener. And there's a couple environmental pieces that we'd like to see these funds, but our big push is for growing greener. As you heard Michelle speak earlier, there were 2 prior iterations of growing greener. And we are looking for either standalone legislation or throughout the budget package to get passed this spring before session takes its summer break at the end of June. Right now, as you can see on this slide, there is a Senate and a House bill for Growing Greener 3, which would provide $500 million into the Growing Greener program. It has kind of stalled out a little bit on the House side. It is sitting in House ERE, Environmental Resources and Energy Committee. We have been speaking with leadership. They do feel that there is movement as a nice bipartisan bill that it will move forward. On the Senate side, the Senate version has gone to what we call second consideration, meaning that it is now in Senate appropriations. And that is led by Senator Brown. He is chair of Senate Appropriations. It passed through their committee process already on the Senate side. So those 2 bills, again, you can see it on the slide, but it's House Bill 2020 and Senate Bill 525. The other option that we see as a vehicle to move this through is the fiscal year 22-23 state budget. In February, Governor Wolf proposed $450 million to the Growing Greener program. So we're really glad that the governor is also on board with this. It's a little bit less than the Growing Greener legislation that is sitting there. And we feel like there's a little bit of a negotiating tool happening. But the state legislature will need to allocate ARP funds this fiscal year, or the state risks losing these funds as the federal government has come out with some of these guidelines. And it's a fascinating time when our state has operated in a very lean mindset for several years to have this much available funding. So it's going to be very interesting to watch as we go forward. And we're really excited because of the bipartisan legislation in both chambers, plus the governor's budget address, that we will be able to move forward. And I just want to clarify, and this was something that actually came up in a meeting with a legislator I had this morning, is that right now, you saw 2 maps earlier on the screen, the Environmental Stewardship Fund, the Keystone Fund. Those are what we call special funds in Harrisburg. And those funds are not going anywhere. We're going to keep getting these grant programs through and through. What we are aiming for is a $500 million infusion into those funds because we have such an immense backlog. DCNR is at about $1.5 billion behind just in park maintenance for DCNR. So we need a substantial investment, a shot in the arm to move these programs forward, even though our special funds are still going to be there. Maybe we can increase ways that we can increase those funds, but Growing Greener is much needed, as you heard and saw from all of these projects. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Katie, for that exciting update. So now we are going to move it to the most anticipated portion, right? The question and answer area. So it's open up to our panelists. So we're going to start with the first one, which I think is a pretty good question, although all of them are pretty good. What types of organizations can apply for these grants, and how can they apply?
Lots of them. And I'd like Julie to chime in too with the how do we apply. I'm seeing her next to me on my screen. So yes, funding DCNR would also be funding jobs. I just saw that pop up. So many organizations can apply, municipalities can apply, conservation associations can apply. It is typically given to what we would call a C3 nonprofit or municipal entity, and sometimes through agreements, they can partner together on those things. They are not typically given to for-profit entities, but for-profit entities have partnered with nonprofit entities to get projects done before, because sometimes these grants do require some level of matching funds and things like that, depending on the type of specifics that are in the grant. Julie, do you want to talk about how to apply?
So I want to give a shout out to our project manager, Susan Harris, who I believe is on this call, who is amazing at finding grant sources and leveraging and finding match dollars. You know, I think that our state has done a really good job making this information available. So, you know, there are webinars when Growing Greener funding comes out. You need to make sure that you're on the list to get the request for proposals when that comes out. I think that what Katie said is wonderful. There are watershed organizations and a bunch of other organizations that can provide technical assistance that can help you with a partnership if you're looking for that. So I think there you go. I mean, it's a sort of open process. Somebody just put that right there in the chat. And for watershed organizations, I mean, if there are municipalities and other organizations within our watershed that want to apply, we would love to work with them. And I think that is probably the same across watershed organizations. We all want to get this work done. And not one organization can't do it alone. Many of these need partnerships. Partnerships make it easier to find match dollars, to find volunteers. So, you know, the way to really get this work done is to work together.
Thank you so much, folks. So the next question, Julie, is also for you, which was, are master naturalists and master gardeners involved with these projects?
So we don't turn anybody away. And we have relationships with, I don't know if we have any official relationships with the Master Gardener program, but we would welcome that. Most watershed organizations, I think, have those kind of relationships. We work with Master Watershed Stewards as well. You know, these are all county, they're organized on a county basis. And we welcome any support that we can get from volunteers, especially from volunteers like Master Watershed Stewards who are trained, who can lead a group of volunteers, you know, who are really reliable and can help explain things to people. So, you know, again, like I said before, any partners, if there are Master Watershed Stewards and we have a wonderful relationship with the Philly program and the Montco program, if people want to contact us, or want to have their coordinator get in touch with us or any other groups, I know that we would be happy to do that. We also need folks for maintenance. I can say that across the state, all these projects need help with maintenance, and folks, and those programs are really helpful that way.
Okay, thank you, Julie, for that one. Let us see. Next question we have, Is there any idea floating around regarding development and tree planting when trees are cut down with the development? Somebody had stated I'm in the lower Bucks and know that there's large tree planting goals in Philadelphia. For example, if a development cuts down a forested area for their building, can the developer of the new owner of the land be required to replant elsewhere trees in the community?
This one depends on where you live, big time. And this is where I love talking to citizens who advocate in their community. And as a municipal official, please show up at your local municipal meeting. So this kind of thing is really determined by local zoning and planning laws. Sometimes county, but typically it starts local and then will spread out with a county final approval. So to prevent, trees being cut down for certain reasons, et cetera, you really need to go back to your local municipality and see what zoning requirements are, building requirements are, et cetera. A lot of times, if advocacy is done properly with local officials, you can get them to give variances or to add conditions to development plans. And we strongly encourage that. And there's some great resources at our partner, We Conserve PA. They have a great sort of sample library of sort of conservation easement type things that you can go find on their website. And it's very handy if you're just getting involved.
Thank you so much. Next question, I believe, is for Thomas. Is there any monetary liability for past industries who made pollution?
Well, the only surrender that they have is they have to they lose their bonding. The bond is forfeited.
I don't think you're there.
Hey, Tom, you might want to turn off.
Can you hear us?
You might want to turn off.
Tom, you might want to turn off your video. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, can you hear us still?
Yes.
Can you
we can
hear
you.
us now?
Yes, we can hear you. All right, looks like we might have lost Tom. Maria, do you want to take the next question?
Sure. So I have another good lengthy one. I'm looking at a county plan to put in a 10 wide trail along the mid-trunk of the Neshaminy Creek. My concern is that they have to excavate and remove trees. I feel like this is natural green infrastructure and the wildlife corridor. I hope this will not happen as it is overdeveloping an area. It is overkill because they are hoping it will be the circuit. They are building it segment by segment to get permits. A natural walking trail will be enough and not ruin the natural buffer. So I don't know who would like to take that one on our panel.
Yeah, I think this goes kind of back to my earlier answer of check your local zoning and show up at local meetings and ask questions. My first question to the person who asked that is funding to do this project? Are there certain requirements from certain entities that it has to be paved and ADA accessible? There are ways to do ADA accessibility in much more natural ways as well, which is something you could advocate for, where it's not just a 10-foot wide paved path. And another thing is that depending on the entity who's putting this project through, is being able to advocate for them, on this path weave through old growth. Doesn't have to be a straight path where you tear down trees, but I'm just going to plug local advocacy is going to be your best weapon here. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out with more details. Happy to help.
Thank you so much. So the next question deals with what are the dynamics with the funds pursued regarding supporting Chesapeake Bay maintenance? And I'll actually start with that one because I live and work in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. As we mentioned earlier in the slideshow, Pennsylvania has for a long time now not been meeting its pollution reduction goals in the Chesapeake Bay. And one of the key ways that what's causing that are runoff pollution, particularly from fertilizer, excess fertilizer use. And things like riparian forest buffers, rain gardens, all help reduce that runoff. And it's such an important part of helping Pennsylvania have the funding necessary to reduce our pollution reduction goals. So Growing Greener and the Growing Greener 3 bills, like that is essential to making sure we clean the Chesapeake Bay as it is for all the state. Is there anyone else who wants to add anything to that question?
That was good. Thank you, Michael.
All right, so
Perfect.
next,
Maria, you want to ask the next one?
yes. So next question, do you think Reggie or Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative will help fund more of these projects?
No. I want
Very simply put, I love it, Katie, yes.
So I know we have members who work with us on energy issues, just like conservation issues. But the Reggie funds need to go because Reggie was done by an executive action and not legislated. The funds need to be appropriated for very certain things, and a bulk of the funds will go directly to DEP. And it is, even though we think planting trees is air quality, but DEP will use that money for very certain programs under the Air Quality Act. So that's going to be separate. So that Reggie funds would be good for, energy efficiency, weatherization, things like that, more hardscape, improvements on hardscape, things like that.
Thank you so
I
much.
wanted to interject something here. EDF asked me to be a declaratant in Pennsylvania for Reggie, so I spoke with some of their folks, and we'll see how that happens, what happens with that. But basically, they're preparing because they're either getting sued or about to get sued because.
Yep. It's all in the courts. It's just a delay tactic. Thank you so much for your help with that, Peg.
And hello, Peggy, our fabulous volunteer. How you doing?
Thank you so much. Going back to Growing Greener, there's a question asking when trees are cut down with development, does Growing Greener help replenish those forested areas that have been cut down? Is that something that the Growing Greener project could help with?
It can, but not on a large reforestation scale. A lot of that work is done through the Department of Ag and the Pennsylvania forestry folks. So that's a little bit different, same but different.
No, that's good. And just to extend this question for Julie, have you all ever done a reforestation project or even part of that? And if so, what were some of the things you were thinking about to get that project started off the ground?
We have not done a reforestation project. I mean, we have planted riparian buffers, we have restored wetlands. We are really not in areas where there is forest to restore. I'm gonna say that. So I think someone else could probably answer that question.
Cool. Thank you for clarifying that.
All right. So I have another question. Is there any way that a large infrastructure package funding that was given over to PA can be put into Growing Greener?
In terms of the IIJA that just came out of the feds, no, regretfully. Projects can be similar there's a little bit of overlap in program, right? So what the federal infrastructure plan does is it's doing more of these large scale, much more specific projects, as well as then having supplemental grant programs that are going to be a lot more for municipalities to do things like stormwater, lead pipe, et cetera. It will help, it will complement, but they can't be put together. But the ARP funds that the state has, the previous good legislation out of the feds, is what we are advocating for, because IIJA is a little bit different.
Thank you, Katie. Appreciate that. Always good for an acronym or two. Next is, are there any crowdfunding opportunities open? Can other decentralized methods like credit union loans or infrastructure banks be used for nonprofits and for-profits to create ecotourism areas for Growing Greener? I feel this could be a great way to supplement Growing Greener funding. And I'd really like to hear from both Katie and Julie on that if you've had any experience with that.
Julie, do you want to take a stab first?
Sure. So that was about credit union, sort of alternative sources of funding.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's other, no, I don't think we've done that. I think that there are a bunch of different sort of resources out there that are, you know, alternative funds that are set up that are often established by corporations to sort of pay back. And we've had access to some of those funds. You know, they're businesses that, you know, like Coors or Coke, Coca-Cola, who take funds and set up, you know, they then fund a conservation organization that's going to make those decisions and figure out how to share those dollars. We've certainly participated in that. I think that's a great idea. I think that, you know, sort of this country lacks in some ways creative ideas to refund, you know, to get programs like this funded. Well, I know that there, and Katie would know more about this, you know, I know that there's certain mitigation, you know, if there's a oil spill or the airport is expanding, that provides mitigation dollars. But it's interesting. We have not done that yet.
Yeah, there's I have kind of two add-ons to this. The first is our legislature, former Majority Speaker Turzai hated bonding with a passion. He has not been around now for 2 years. So our current legislature, even though it's not super pro-environmental, our current legislature is way more open, I wouldn't say favorable, but open to bonding issues, to do other things like this. So that is something on that end. I always, and some of this is both sort of the local activist and municipal official in me. The last thing I want is to have to pay back a loan. If I can get as much grant funding as possible for a project that isn't going to cost the taxpayers more money, the more favorable I'm going to be for that. Like, that's where grant funding just is so much better than loans in that regard. I'm just thinking about, you know, we have 8 years left on our sewer system bill that we're going to have to pay. You know, I'm thinking about things like that.
But Katie, Penvest is a, you know,
Yep.
So, you know, if you think about how we fund things, and I'm not an expert in this, but something like housing, I mean,
Yeah.
it makes sense to borrow for things like housing. You know, maybe we need to, you know, think about that a little bit more, because this is an investment in our future, right? Environmental infrastructure. So that's interesting, and it's something we're thinking about. And Penvest is a state agency that provides loans for infrastructure.
Yep. And that's with the state revolving funds for drinking water and things like that, which is how a lot of municipalities also apply for low interest loans to replace water lines, do sewer systems, all kinds of stuff like that. All of this, by the way, if you haven't noticed, is very complementary of each other. All these different lanes we're kind of taking.
Michael,
So, yeah, Maria, do you want to take that second to last question?
Oh, absolutely. It's nice to see you again, Tom Thomas. We'll go right back. So question, are growing greener funds used for agricultural conservation and BMP?
Yeah, and I can take that question to start with, and we are running out of time. So if you please keep in your questions, and we'll do our best to follow up with all you. But yes, and plus. So growing greener can be used for land preservation, including for agricultural uses. And that's a key aspect of making sure that we preserve our agriculture. As for the BMPs, which for those that don't know, that's best management practices. And those are sustainable farming techniques, things like cover crops or no-till farming that help reduce the amount of agricultural runoff pollution. Growing greener doesn't do too much as far as I know on its own, but there is a companion bill that we didn't even touch on tonight called this Clean Streams Fund that is all about that. And that bill, along with the Growing Greener bills, we hope to push across the finish line, either as standalone bills or in the budget. So great question, great thinking, and yes, plus is my answer. And I think with that, we're going to go to our final question. Thank you all so much. And the question is, how can volunteers get involved with implementing and maintaining these Growing Greener projects?
Call Julie and Tom. Call your local watershed association. Call your local watershed association. Don't blow up Julie and Tom's cell phones, please. And also, we lifted up We Conserve earlier. They also have a list of land conservation associations as well on their website, but the resources are out there, and good luck. They're always looking for volunteers.
I don't know.
Julie. Can I
Yes,
say
Tom.
something? Can I ask you a question? There's supposed to be acid mine drainage monies in this infrastructure business, or the ARP monies. And some people have said that 30% would be given towards operation and maintenance, because that's really what I want to bring home as far as we're concerned in our situation. If you build, these are quote passive treatment systems, but they're not really passive because they need to be dug up and hosed off so they continue to produce alkalinity. So if we're going to build these sites and we can't maintain them, then we're just wasting the people's money.
Yep, we're really excited about the federal infrastructure bill that recently passed, because that's what Tom's talking about. But we need continued support for all of that.
And Tom, we'll make sure you, Julie, are connected. And for everyone else, thank you so much for attending tonight's event. Again, if we didn't get to your questions, we'll do our best to follow up with each and every one of you. In the meantime, we encourage you to check out our websites and volunteer opportunities. Make sure to check out the maps to find out where there are Growing Greener projects near you, both to visit and to volunteer with. And finally, keep an eye on your inbox to receive more information and receive a copy of this recording. Thank you all so much, and have a great night.
Thank you all.
Nice work. Thank you.